I've always enjoyed traveling around, and I never did the gap year when I was young. I went straight from school to starting working first as a graphic designer, where I got my education, and then got into radio and found my passion in that.
Welcome to a new episode of Most Memorable Journeys. My guest today is very far away from me. He is actually sitting between Brisbane and Cairns in Australia, but he's an interesting man. He's a full-time nomad. He is a travel podcaster, radio host. I checked on him on social media. He is a lot of things, and we're going to find out more about him during this interview, I am sure. Welcome to Most Memorable Journeys, Palle Bo. How are you?
I am very good, Elizabeth, and it's so good to finally meet you. I'm just so bummed that we didn't know each other when I was in Cyprus. 8 months ago, I think. I think it was in, or maybe it's a bit more than that. But I was touring around Cyprus, and it would have been cool to meet you. But that gives me another reason to come back, because I have so much more to see.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say now. Then you'll just have to come back. That's a good reason. And that's a good question that I want to ask you now, because I think Australia is your 102nd or 103rd country. I saw somewhere
116.
116. And my question now is, do you visit countries twice, or is this not something that you normally do?
Oh, yes, I do. And I do that quite a lot, actually. And sometimes it's because I feel I'm not really finished. Maybe it's because I loved it so much, so I keep coming back. Or maybe it's because it didn't really make an impression on me, and I feel it's being unfair to the country.
You want to give it another chance.
Yeah, a good example of that, I haven't been there the second time, was, people always ask travelers like you and me, what's your favorite country? And I always say Cape Town and South Africa. And then they say, what's your least favorite country? And I really don't like that question. And for a long time, I was saying Mauritania, between Morocco, Western Sahara, and down to Senegal. But I only just went through. I was doing a road trip from Morocco all the way down to Guinea-Bissau and Guinea. And I basically just spent a day and a half driving through on bad roads, trying to avoid hitting cows and goats and stuff that was going over, and potholes. And then I spent one night there. I didn't go out exploring. And so it didn't seem that interesting to me. And then I have a friend of mine who's traveled even more than me. He said, "What do you mean? I love that country." And he spent a week and a half there and really loved it. So I feel it's unfair to Mauritania that I put that out as something that I didn't really like, because I didn't spend enough time there. So that's something that made me put that back on the list of countries that I want to go back to and see again, and really find out if I was right or wrong.
Yeah. And another thing that I believe is that it always also depends a little bit on how we personally feel at this moment in our life, in what state we are. Because when I was a tour guide, I used to have people traveling with me, and they were just unhappy. They didn't live a happy life. And you could have taken them anywhere or I used to take them to the most beautiful place in the world, and they found something to complain about. So I think, it's a very, very, that thing about which country do you like most or which country do you like the least is difficult. It's a difficult question, or it's something that you can't really answer.
It's true. Did you sometimes get the reviews? Oh, it was raining, 2 stars.
Exactly. I had a woman who complained because there was a slight tremor. It wasn't even an earthquake, but she was complaining about me that I took her into an earthquake in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay.
She didn't like me.
Interesting.
That was clear. But So, but just to tell you the things that you put up with. So, because personally myself, I can't say which one is my favorite country and which one is my least favorite country, because first of all, I love the world. I love everything.
Yeah.
I don't love
Yeah.
everything. I'm not that naive, but I try to find the best in every place.
Yeah, yeah, and it's more easy for me to make a top 10 that is not prioritized, where it's these are really countries that I really love and I want to go back and explore more in. I can do that, but once I get started, I'm sure it's going to be a top 20. And then also when I speak to people, I say, "Oh, what are your greatest cities that you've visited?" Not that I'm not going for big cities only, but I'm also doing that. And then I tend to think of cities outside of Europe, because I grew up in Denmark, and then they say, "Well, what about European cities?" Oh, wait a minute. Then I can really think of a lot of cities in Europe that are so amazing. Yeah, sometimes what's in the backyard is something we forget how great it is. But obviously, Denmark is the best country in the world. That's for sure.
As you see. But you see, this is the thing. I think COVID, or the pandemic, gave many people the opportunity to reconnect with their own country, or with the place where they were. But like I was here in Cyprus, and I love hiking and I do a lot of stuff. But I did even discover Cyprus even more. Where were you during the pandemic?
Traveling around the world. No, I was, during the pandemic, I was in 5 continents and 35 countries until the pandemic sort of fizzled over. But I was in the hardest lockdown. I managed to make it down to my favorite city, Cape Town, and get stuck there.
That's a nice place to be stuck in.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. And I was in Bali when it broke out, and we didn't really know what is this. And we heard some people say, "Oh, this is going to be bad. This is going to be bad. I'm going back home now." And I spoke to a Swedish guy, and we were just laughing and said, "Oh, that guy, he's just so hysterical. Come on, this is just some kind of flu or something." Mm-hmm. So I yeah, it was crazy. Thinking back, and then after that, I went to Europe, because there was ITB, a big travel fair in Berlin that I wanted to attend. So I went to Qatar, and then to Denmark, and then I went to Berlin. When I boarded the plane to go to Berlin, the whole event had been canceled. I thought, well, I got the plane ticket, non-refundable. I got a place to stay. And also, I'm doing some work for a travel conference that was to have a conference in Sicily. And they already booked my flight from Berlin. So I thought, yeah, well, whatever. Instead of sitting somewhere in Denmark working where I don't have a home, let me go to the hostel in Berlin and just do some work there. Maybe there are other travelers who made it there, who had non-refundable tickets. And yeah, there were. I went to a travel massive event, and we were a lot of old friends there and giving hugs, and I don't know what we were thinking, but still it was early March, and still we didn't really know how bad it was. And then the travel content creation conference, TBEX, was canceled in Sicily. So all of a sudden I had no flights to Sicily. I've requested them. They booked a flight from Berlin to Sicily, and then from Sicily after the conference to Cape Town. I thought, okay, let me see if there's another way I can get to Cape Town. And I found a flight to Egypt, spent 5 days in Egypt, and got to Cape Town on March the 12th, where the next day things shut down, like really shut down. And that's when it dawned on me, okay, this is serious. And maybe I was in some kind of denial about how crazy this was. But I thought, okay, I'm going to be a month in Cape Town during this lockdown thing. And I ended up staying 9 months there. Like you say, it's not the worst place to be stuck. I have so many close friends there. And when we were able to leave the apartment, because Cape Town on South Africa had a very strict lockdown, Like for one, they took away the wine. Can you believe it? It was a complete alcohol ban, and that was one of the reasons I went there to get some South African wine. I
Oh
didn't
my
know
God.
the president. I heard about it Saturday morning when I came down to the supermarket to get a bottle of wine for the weekend, and apparently the president was on TV Friday night saying we're having an alcohol ban starting right now. So there was no warning. There was no way to stock up. So I went a long time without wine until my local friends and the curfew started being at 9 o'clock at night, so we could meet late afternoon, early night, and just make sure that we were home by 9 o'clock. And then it became 11 o'clock. And somehow people are creative in South Africa. So they managed to find a friend who had a friend who worked at a winery, and we could get some bottles of wine without labels and stuff like that. So we were flying under the radar and breaking the rules, and but that's all part of the experience.
How amazing. I mean, I've got a very, very similar story to tell you, because I was in complete denial. I thought, this is rubbish. We've had MERS and SARS and Ebola and all this.
Oh,
rubbish.
come on.
And it takes 2 weeks and then it's over. And my daughter was traveling in South America. She was doing this workaway thing. And I had arranged to meet her in Buenos Aires. And on the 11th of March, I flew from Cyprus via Switzerland to Buenos Aires, like an 18 hours flight. And I arrived on the 12th. And on the 13th, we were told, we went on a walking tour, and we were told that anybody who hasn't been here for at least 2 weeks is not allowed to participate in the tour. That was the one thing. And that the country is going to close down on the 16th to all flights to Europe. So I had to get the hell out of there as fast as possible. Mm-hmm. And I made it to Switzerland. And then when I landed in Switzerland, I found out that Cyprus was imposing a 2 weeks quarantine in a hotel to everybody who arrives. And I wanted to come back home. Cyprus, I'm home here. So my husband is here. So I actually was one of the first people who ended up 2 weeks I had a great time, though. I was in a nice hotel by the beach with a balcony and had 2 weeks of peace.
Yeah. I've never been in quarantine anywhere. It's kind of weird because from November 2020, I've been traveling again full time from place to place to place. And actually, another thing, Elizabeth, when I was in Cape Town, I'd been traveling full time for 3.5 years, and I keep track of where I stay and where I am, and it's kind of my thing. A bit of a geek on that, and so I could make a calculation. Okay, I've been traveling this long time, and I've been staying in this many places, and my average in one place, and this is going to sound crazy, was 3.5 days in one place before packing and unpacking. Obviously, sometimes I stayed a bit longer, and then sometimes I've done a road trip where it's just going to be one night. But it sounds crazy, and kind of is. But I was I rented an apartment from a friend of mine in Greenpoint in Cape Town, one of my favorite places in Cape Town. And the apartment was amazing, and I got a really good deal at it. But then at the same time, I was going crazy because I saw the same place all the time, and I'm so used to moving. You couldn't go for a run. You couldn't go for a walk. You could only go for shopping. And I was right on top of the Woolworth in Greenpoint. So I could just go downstairs, have a little chat with the woman at the reception there, and then go to the supermarket, and I didn't see anyone. And then I realized, I might not be able to get a flight out of the country, but I can still move within Cape Town. When they started having the total lockdown, so I moved 5 times when I was in Cape Town. I moved to the CBD. I moved to Hout Bay, where my friends lived. And then I moved 500 meters within Hout Bay, just south of Cape Town City, to another apartment because I just needed the change and the packing and unpacking. And then I have a very good friend who has a big house in Camps Bay, and he has divided that into apartments. So I rented an apartment with him, and and hung out with him for the rest of the time. But yeah, I was still moving within when I was not able to.
Because you just can't help it. And this is normally how I start this podcast. My question normally is, how did this start? When were you on a plane the first time?
We're starting the interview now.
Starting the interview now. Yes. Exactly.
When I was on a plane, I guess I was close to 10 years old. I come from a family that's, kind of middle class. I have 3 siblings, so we were 4 kids, and some of my friends, they would go to Mallorca from Denmark, or the Gran Canaria, or somewhere in Italy, and get on a plane. And we didn't do that. We vacationed every summer, but only within Denmark. So I've been to every single corner of Denmark, and it was really a family tradition that we would rent a summer cottage by the beach somewhere in Denmark, and always different places. So we traveled within Denmark. But then my mother's sister and her family took a gap year. I don't even know why, but they went to Tenerife, and then we went to visit them, and I got on a flight for the first time, and was there. And even though I was just a kid, I remember it very vividly, because that was really a unique experience for me to go there.
That's probably when you caught the travel bug, because it must have started somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know. I've always enjoyed traveling around, and I never did the gap year when I was young. I went straight from school to starting working first as a graphic designer, where I got my education, and then got into radio and found my passion in that. Been really having a wonderful life doing the radio thing, but that also gave me the opportunity to go to some exotic places for radio conferences, both within Europe and also to the US. And then at a later time, I was able to become a speaker and speak at conferences, and had the opportunity with that to go to Iran and Iraq and India, and some more exotic places with that. And I think that was more in my adulthood that I really caught the bug, because somehow, if I was even just going to Italy or Spain and walking around in a market, hearing the different sounds in the background and smelling the different spices on the market, and hearing the languages being spoken in the background, and maybe just the light, the way that it was different from where I came from, the sunlight and the sunset. And I don't know, it just opened my senses. So every time I would do my 1 week, 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks of vacation, I would feel so creative, and I would get so many ideas of something that had nothing to do with what I was seeing. The way they were decorating a shop, a sign, a logo, or it would give me an idea. And so I always had a notepad and then wrote down every little kind of thing that came into my mind. And I think it was actually more around there that I really caught it.
I think I call this thing, it's the thing that makes your heart sing. I think when you find out what you were just describing before, being in different places, being on the market, smelling, hearing, it's using all your senses and really, really realizing where you are, and also realizing how good life is, how beautiful life is. I think that's the thing that I've noticed that people who travel often share. It's this appreciation of life a lot more. And I also think it's understanding at the end that the world is really small. We are all the same people.
We are all the same people, all people that I've met around the world. Yeah, the cultures are different, and the way we're living is so different. I am just putting out episodes from my trip to Saudi Arabia, and it is so different, and the way they live there. But I try to understand why is it the way that it is, because it's so easy being from the outside and looking in and saying, what a horrible place, and the way they're treating women and LGBTQ, and there's so many things that is so different from the way we think, and we assume that we're right and they're wrong. But sometimes it's a good idea to see, sure, there are things that are not right about that, that I strongly disagree with. But at the same time, we also need to keep an open mind. And just speaking of Saudi Arabia, there was some of the most friendly, helpful people. Actually, I've seen that in a lot of Islamic countries, that they are so helpful and so eager to get to know you, and
hospitality.
Yes. So many people that's been to Iran. If you say where are the friendliest people, 9 out of 10 would say Iran. And I had the similar experience in Iran, but even just as much when I was in Saudi Arabia. I went to a gas station in the morning. We were doing a road trip, me and my friend, and I just wanted to get something for breakfast, just a croissant or something that I could eat in the car. And they didn't accept Visa card or MasterCard, and they only accepted the local Mata card. And okay, that's okay. I'll just find something elsewhere. And then there was a random customer there, and it was not like a rich sheikh. It was a very common looking guy working in his truck. He said, "No, let me pay for you." And I said, "No, I can't let you do that." "Yeah, sure. What do you want?" And then I said, "Well, this croissant." "Yeah, do that, but you need more. You need some." And then he walked around with me in the shop and put some juice in a basket and some biscuits and some chips and some. "You need this and this and this and this." And I went out of there with a full plastic bag full of stuff. And for him, it was of course, there's a guy in need, so I help him. And I think that's very much a part of their culture. And it happened to me twice. It wasn't the only time it happened. It was mind-blowing and so different. I bet you would not do that in Denmark or Switzerland, in many other countries. It's so rare and such a warm feeling.
Yeah, I totally get you. And my daughter traveled in Iran for 6 weeks, and she was just delighted. She loved the people. Mm-hmm. She loved the place. I haven't been, and it's definitely on my list of things to do. And what you're saying about hospitality, I mean, this is definitely, Cyprus is very far in the Eastern Mediterranean. We are part of the Middle East geographically. That's the one thing that I love so much about here. You know, your biggest worry really is that somebody would leave your house hungry. You want to make sure that everybody always, that everybody has enough to eat. And this is the thing that I notice in our neighboring countries, Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, all this area, and you're saying Iran. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Saudi, because I had seen that you've been to Saudi. Do you think Saudi is, because from what I understand, they want to open up a little bit more to tourism. Is Saudi Arabia ready for tourism?
Yes, absolutely. And if you want to go to a country that's not overrun by tourists yet, now is the time to go. They're really getting ready, and they've got so much to offer. And they opened up, I think, 3 years ago. Before that, it was so hard to get in without having a personal invitation or a reason to be in the country. But now they've got this 2030 plan. Also bidding for the World Expo in 2030. I think even also the FIFA World Cup. I don't think they'll get that because it was just in Qatar, and a lot of controversy about that. And they also have maybe an issue with migrant workers, but they're really, really opening up. And I saw a guy. It's actually, the picture of that is in the episode that I just published when we're speaking now. I don't know when you're going to publish this, but it's the episode number 3 of the travel episodes from Saudi. There's a guy wearing a T-shirt where on the back it says "Change in Progress." And there was this young guy, and he worked with a young Saudi girl that I did an interview with, and she does selling tours and stuff, and she was not wearing any head covering. She was wearing some hip clothes, and I did an interview with her about what she does and also about the country. And then at the end I say, how did you learn to speak so well English? And she said, oh, from movies and music. And then she said, thank you, Eminem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you see, this is propaganda and media and people who dislike other people who create this idea and pass it on to the gullible people who like to believe it. And it's not like that.
No, there are definitely. I also did an episode with the good and the bad about Saudi, where I share what I think, my personal opinion about what is good about the country and what needs to be improved, especially if they want to be accepted as this outgoing, but still keep the culture because oh my God, they got so much history, they got so much to offer, and so much natural beauty. The whole area around Alula, with natural rock formations, is astonishing. And I could see that they're really getting ready because it was just there before. Maybe some of the local Saudis went there and could appreciate it, but I can see that they're really getting ready to welcome a lot of tourists. And they have a lot to offer. And we started by talking about countries that I would go back to, and that is definitely on my list. Maybe go back in 5 years and see the change, because I feel that there's so much that's going to happen in the next 5 years, up to 2030. Yeah. Interesting place.
Yeah, and it's a huge country.
Huge.
It's absolutely huge when you compare it to like the United Arab Emirates, which is just a few towns, a few cities. I mean, it's amazingly big.
I rented a car, and in 10 days, me and my friend, we drove 4,000 kilometers, going from Riyadh to the other coast and then back to Riyadh. So, yeah, we did a lot of driving, but it's a great country to do a road trip in.
I'm sure it is. And people often have this misconception, which is just created by a few. And I think just when you were mentioning another country that is really, really up and coming, and that I visited the first time in 2011, I think, and I've been going regularly, is Albania. Because that too has, when I went the first time, the roads were rubbish. And they are getting ready, or they are ready, really.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you're mentioning that, because that was that year that I visited Albania. That just blew me away. I was in Greece, and I have this thing where I say, I'm trying to go to every country in the world. And I wanted to go to the whole region with the Bosnia and Montenegro and the Balkan area. And I thought, well, between Greece and there, Albania. So let me go and see what it's like. I had no expectations. Oh my God, it blew me away. And it's really, I could see that becoming the next big thing. And I didn't even go to the coast. I saw some pictures of the coastline, and I can see that it's beautiful, like Montenegro and Croatia. And it's such a beautiful country with so many wonderful people. And Tirana is a wonderful city. I think it also helped that I just before, like a few months before, I got a random friend request from a guy from Albania. I get a lot of friend requests because they can see, okay, I do some travel, and then this guy worked in tourism. And I accepted the friend request and said that I'm actually going to Albania. And then he said, "Oh, we should meet." And then he showed me around, and he is now one of my good friends. And shout out to Adam. And that I'm sure that might also be a part of why I really liked it so much. But I got to see so many things there.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's the south of Albania. There is certain beaches in the south of Albania which look just like the Caribbean. I mean, it's and the whole, as you mentioned, the whole of all the Balkan countries. I love Bosnia. I love Sarajevo. So many places that people don't want to hear about. Many, okay, I'm always talking about, but yeah.
Yeah, I went to Mostar, obviously a place with
Yes,
a lot of dark history as well,
yes,
but
yes,
important to visit. I didn't go to Sarajevo, so I want to go back.
exactly.
But then, yeah, maybe one of the reasons that I liked it so much, Albania, was that I had no expectations, and whereas I had very high expectations of Croatia, and it was okay, but it didn't blow me away in the same way. I've been back in 2022, and yeah, I was in Split and Pristina, and I can see what it's all about. It is an amazing country, but I would say the coastline and the landscapes are even more astonishing in Montenegro than they are
Yes,
in Croatia. But,
yes.
but all that whole region is unbelievable.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Now that we're talking of it, it's just the world is very beautiful, and there is beauty there. But you see, there is beauty everywhere if you want to see it.
Hmm.
You have to
Hmm.
see it. You have to really put your mind to it and see things. There is something else that I had made a note of. You wanted to dive in the barrier reef, and you did.
I did when I started planning to travel. It was 3 years before I actually did, because it was in 2012, 13 that I thought, okay, I can see in 2016 my youngest will graduate and move out of the country. So I started planning, and I went totally into planning mode for 2-3 years. And a part of the preparation was to become a certified scuba diver, because I knew that at some point I would be at the Great Barrier Reef. And so I did my PADI license when I was in Denmark in freezing cold water with almost no visibility. Not the best place to get it. It's better in warm blue water, but yeah, I got it there. But that was part of my preparation, because I wanted to go scuba diving. And since then, I've been diving quite a few places around the world. But my bucket list came a week and a half ago, when I got to Great Barrier Reef and got to Cairns. And I went on a 3-day trip, living on a boat. I did 8 dives in some different reefs in the Great Barrier Reef. And speaking about how I was disappointed with some of the countries that I have high expectations of, I was a little bit afraid, am I going to be disappointed? Because I've really set myself up to this is the best thing. And no, it exceeded my expectations, and it was amazing. Are you a scuba diver?
Well, I was just going to tell you, because you say that you learned to dive in the dark waters of Denmark. I was working at a tender age of 25. I was sent for 5 months to the Maldives. I was so bored that I learned to scuba dive.
What?
Because there was no internet. I lived on an island where you can walk around in 10 minutes for 5 months.
Okay.
So I dove myself to death, really, because there wasn't much else to do. I used to windsurf from one island to the other, and I used to read, of course, but how much can you read? So yes, but I'm not a scuba. I didn't go back. I never went. Funny enough, I didn't do a certification, which is stupid, because it would have been the perfect opportunity to do it. I did not, and I never went diving again.
Oh, there's still time. There's
Yes,
still time.
there is. Yes, and now we're going to back. That was just a little intro, because I want to go back to your bucket list. What else is on there?
Well, I'm gonna do one that's been on the top for a long time. I'm gonna do that in a month's time, when I get on a cruise in Sydney to go to with 12 stops along the way, or 12 days. I think it's 10 stops, and then ending up in Sydney. No, in Auckland, New Zealand. So I'm gonna spend 50 days in New Zealand and see how much I can explore. And yeah, that's been so high on my bucket list.
Will this be your first time in New Zealand?
It will, yeah. And it's also, now I'm in Australia. It's my first time here as well.
Yeah.
And it's both these countries have been on my list for so long. When I was in Bali, when the pandemic came, it was actually my thought that I would go to Australia, but then everything shut down. And yeah,
Yeah.
So I haven't been able to do it before now, and now I'm here, and I'm totally loving it, and I'm sure I'm going to love New Zealand as well.
Well, all I can say is that when I used to do those Australia round trips, on one occasion, when we had more than 10 people adding a week in New Zealand, we would accompany them as tour guides. And I have been to New Zealand for 1 week. And I did New Zealand in 1 week, basically, like the Japanese would do with Europe in 1 week or in 2 weeks. So I've seen that it's very, very beautiful, but I have to go back because there is so much beauty, so much to see.
Yeah.
You're going to love it. Love it.
I am sure I will. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And hopefully, because I found something that's very rare to have, the perfect travel companion, somebody that travels in the same style. And it's a good friend of mine. She's a lawyer from Florida. We got to meet there, and in a year ago when we were in Saudi Arabia, we did that trip together. And then since then, we've also done Ghana, Togo, Benin, back to Togo, back to Ghana, Sao Tome, back to Ghana. And we've done Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Armenia trip. So we've done a few trips. I'm doing my best to persuade her that she should get on that cruise with me, and then hopefully we can do another road trip, and then do that in New Zealand. And
crazy. Listen, time has been passing very quickly. I could talk to you for, 10 hours here, but we're getting to the end. But I have a question, Palle. How long are you going to do this? You're not getting any younger, don't people? People are asking you that question.
Okay. Here's my thoughts on that. Because when I started traveling, I thought it was going to be 2 years when I did the planning thing. 2 years. Actually, in the beginning, I called it my project Around the World in 80 weeks, but that's just a year and a half. So, okay, that was not enough. So, and then at the time I left, I said, it's probably going to be 4 years of traveling. Now it's been 6.5. And then I started saying, well, it's until one of my kids starts, quote unquote, producing grandchildren for me. I'm 58. My kids are 26 and 28. And they say, you have another 10, 15 years because it's not going to happen anytime soon. Maybe it'll never happen. So, and I'm feeling, come on. Not that I want to stop traveling, but I also want grandkids. That I can see that some of my friends. So I'm teasing them with that and saying, come on, get on with it. But I don't know, Elizabeth. To be honest, I really don't know when I'm going to stop traveling full-time. I've heard from other full-time nomads that when you get to the 10-year mark, you kind of hit a point where you think that you want to have a base again. And right now, I don't have a base. I don't have an address. I'm not a resident anywhere, and I'm enjoying myself, and I like it. So maybe just by knowing that it's going to come at 10 years, not saying that it will, I'm able to push it a little bit further. But then at the same time, also, I might just change the way I travel and slow down, because I'm still traveling quite fast. 22 was insane. Looking back, it was crazy. I did 37 countries, if I count the ones that I went back to. And I moved 102 times within 12 months. So that was extreme. And I'm not going to do that this year. I'm going to slow a little bit down. And sometimes when I don't feel the hunger to go out and explore, I slow down and say, I just want to find a place where nothing happens and stay there for a couple of weeks to get the hunger back, because I don't want to see myself walking, traveling around New Zealand and being full and not hungry and saying, okay, if that waterfall, I have to walk 1 kilometer. I can't be bothered. It has to be right where I get out of the car. Otherwise, no, that would be a disaster if I get to that point. So I need to appreciate what I see. I don't know. I just go by my feeling. I don't know when I'm going to stop. Ask me again in a couple of years. I might have an answer for you.
I was only teasing you because I also believe that I'm 62 and I have no intention of, okay, I don't live like
But
you.
but I tell you one thing that's for sure, because when I lived in Denmark, I had a nice house. I'm never going to get a big house again because I'm getting so used to living in small places where just a small Airbnb. And I don't want to put my money, which I don't have a lot of, into a big mortgage and all that comes with that. I can settle for a lot less. And then even when I have a base again, I still know that I will get itchy feet, and there will still be places that I want to go to, and there still be places I want to go back to. So I would not spend my money on a big fancy place to stay. I can settle with a lot less. Yeah.
Oh, I absolutely agree. There's this thing about saying I'd rather have a passport full of stamps than a house full of stuff. That is definitely works for me as well. And I'm always saying, like, I keep fit. I do a lot of exercise and I swim in the winter and I do. And the reason is because I want to be able to run up that airplane stairs when I'm 90. You know, the ones that are not docked to a finger dock, the ones that because I don't think that people like you and me it will ever end. I think there will always be a desire. Maybe, as you say, slow down a little bit, but I think the desire will always be there.
I think so. Absolutely. And it also slows down time for me. I did a little TEDx online talk about this, that it was weird when I got to Cape Town. I'd been traveling for 3.5 years. A friend of mine when I was back in Denmark before going to Cape Town, he said, "Oh, have you been traveling for a year?" And I said, "No, I've been traveling for 3.5 years." And he wouldn't believe me. He said, "Come on, you just left." I said, "No, I've been traveling for 3.5 years, but for me it feels like 10 years." And that made me think that it's funny that 10 years, 1 year for him would feel like 10 years for me. And I looked into it, and it's because I put my brain to work every single day. Where do I turn on the lights? Where do I shop? How do I say butter in Albanian? Where do I go? And when you're living in the same place and doing the same thing and going shopping the same places, you're more or less on autopilot. And the older we get, the faster time flies. But I found this way to slow down time. And I feel when I tell you that it's been 6.5 years, it's just looking back at the last 12 months, I can't believe that it's only been a year. And when I lived in Denmark, a year would go by just by snapping my fingers. So, yeah.
Fantastic. I think this is the perfect way to end this interview. Traveling to slow down time and get more out of life. Thank you so much, Palle Bo, for being on Most Memorable Journeys today.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
If you enjoy my podcast, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. You will find all the information in the show notes.